The only thing we have to fear is beer itself.
Beer. So many choices.
Only no function beer well without.
Woohoo! Beer!
Hello and welcome to another episode of Beer Busters, where we're going to bring you the news and reviews of some wonderful brews. My name is Dan Baker, as always, joined by my co-host and brewologist,
Steph Hefner,
and our from entertainer,
Wayne Baker.
Now, today, I have to admit, feels a little weird and kind of out of our comfort zone a little bit, but for good reason. We are on site, not at a brewery, not at the Beer Busters podcast basement, but in an actual recording studio for which I didn't have to set anything up, courtesy of
J.R. Heaps.
JR, thank you so much for inviting us out to your space to do this today, and making sure that I can kind of be lazy coming into this.
No problem.
but we're still around a pool table,
Exactly.
which is awesome.
Yeah, so we managed to keep that with us.
Something familiar.
Yeah. I have to say the weirdest part for me right now is not having headphones on, but it's fun. It's
Well, now
good.
you know how who didn't have them when we were at Shawnee Craft.
Oh, yeah.
Tim
Rodney-
and Rodney did.
Yeah.
Rodney and
That's
Tim
right.
didn't have
So every
that.
time there was a
True.
sound effect, they're like, we have no idea.
Yeah,
what's
it's
going
like,
on.
oh, that sounded good. Yeah. Now, so for everybody out there who might not know, JR is basically the guy and the only guy behind South County Brewing Company. So you guys are located, I guess you, Guy, are located, for our listeners, is it in Greater York itself, or is it...
We're going to be in the southernmost part of York County, hence the name South County, which is really more of a derivative that we ended up because after, 30 different names that we were like thinking about when originally, and I say we because a lot of friends and family and other people have helped, and actually at this point I actually have 3 new business partners, so it is guys at this point.
Okay.
Craig, Roger, and Kurt, brothers, believe it or not, that are some guys that are a little bit older than me, but they're definitely serious businessmen. But in any event, South County is it's in the southernmost part of York County. We're less than a quarter mile from the Maryland line, so we're not really anywhere near the Greater York downtown area. We're about 35 miles north. Southeast of that area for the most part. So
I didn't realize York County would border on the border of Maryland.
York, Fulton, Adams, and Franklin County, and they call them like the front teeth of Pennsylvania because they literally reach down and touch right on the Mason-Dixon line there. So.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
All right, I got a geography lesson today, too. That's even better. We have a normal rundown in front of us, but to get things kind of going, let's get into some news. All right, so there's a few things that I saw on the interwebs that were worth spreading on our portion of the
I thought
interwebs.
you were going to say mentioning. That's
Mentioning,
usually-
I know. I got to spice things up a little bit.
Try to
Share,
change it
spread,
up.
Yes.
mention, convey.
Disseminate.
Convey's a good one. I like that. Now, first and foremost, something that I saw is in regards to Trader Joe's.
Ooh.
Yeah, I know. I figured, Steph, you would like that one. And I still haven't used the Trader Joe's gift card that I got for Christmas from Uncle Chuck, by the way.
I was
I'm
just talking about that the other day because
Yeah.
he got me one too.
Yeah.
I used mine like within a couple days.
See, my thing is, I don't like the parking lot of the one in Philly because it's very small for the amount of people that go to visit there. So I figure I'm waiting for the perfect day where I can, after work, just walk over there.
Nice.
And I'll be set. But anyway, Trader Joe's is going to have a new brewer for their house brand craft beer, which is not available in Pennsylvania, Trader Joe's, but that's, Pennsylvania. Now, currently, Trader Joe's contracts with, as they put it, some big craft breweries to make their house branded beer. They have veterans such as Gordon Biersch to handle the Joseph Brau brand of German-inspired brews. They have Firestone Walker Brewing Company, who was recently brewing their popular Mission Street brand. Is it Street or is it Saint? I was wondering that when I was reading this. Mission Street, Mission Saint, Mission Street sounds a little better.
I think it is Mission Street, yeah.
We're going with that. Now, recently, however, the fast-growing Central Coast Brewery announced that it would be phasing out its contract brewing operations, which was Firestone Walker, of course, so they could focus on meeting demands for its pale ales and expanding distribution of 805 Blonde Ale. Now, LA's, Los Angeles, Golden Road Brewery has stepped in to fill the gap left by Firestone Walker's discontinued Mission Street line with a new house brand made especially for the Trader Joe's markets called Old Borough Brewery. There are 3 beers under the new mark: the Gold Brick Pale Ale, El Guero Blonde Ale, or El Guero Blonde Ale, and Tap
Guero.
See, the article has it listed with 1 R. That's why I didn't roll the R.
Guero.
Yes. And Tap 79 IPA. And the brews are packaged in 4-packs of the 16-ounce cans that Golden Road Brewery is known for and attractively priced at $5 to $7. The LA brewery is not allowed to advertise or promote the beers it brews under contract due to regulations from the California Department of Alcoholic Beverage Control. But Golden Road co-founder and president Meg Gill says we were fortunate enough to brew the first craft canned beer for Trader Joe's. It has been a fun project, and we are proud of the beer. The brewery also now handles the house beers for Lazy Dog restaurants. So instead of Firestone Walker, we have Golden Road Brewery.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Never heard of them.
Now, there is another thing that came out of Bell's, which I know we're all relatively fond of, Bell's Brewery. In the same tradition as their Batch and Wheat series, they are proud to announce the Planet series.
Nice.
It's going to feature...
They're going to have beers named after every planet.
Not every planet. That's what I don't understand.
Are they skipping Uranus?
Well, here's the thing, though. It's going to feature 7 different beers, each inspired by a different piece of music from the composer Gustav Holst. And each beer will be limited and released both in 6-packs and on draft according to the arrangement of Holst's composition across all areas we distribute to, they distribute to. The first Planet beer will be released this August of 2014, with each successive entry debuting about every 2 months afterwards. And the final beer is going to be scheduled for release July 2015. Now, their 2 most successful brands come from a couple of Larry Bell's, the president and founder, great literary references. This time, they took inspiration from a great piece of music from Gustav Holst. Now, to kind of skip some of the boring stuff in the middle, the lineup is going to consist of Mars, the Bringer of Water, which is going to be a double IPA.
The Bringer of Water?
It's going to be Mars, the Bringer of War, which is a double IPA. Venus, the Bringer of Peace, which is a blonde ale brewed with honey, apricot, vanilla, and cardamom. Mercury, the Winged Messenger, which is going to be a Belgian single. Jupiter, the Bringer of... This word got me when I read it too. Jollity?
Jollity.
Jollity.
Interesting.
It's going to be a malt-forward brown ale. Saturn, the Bringer of Old Age, a bourbon barrel-aged barley wine. Uranus or Uranus, the Magician, black double IPA.
The Bringer of things we will not mention.
Yeah.
Yeah, notice how they went with the black IPA.
Thank you. I was just going to say that.
Clever alliteration.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then Neptune the Mystic, which is a beer inspired by Dr. Bell's Medicinal Stout, one of Larry Bell's homebrews that also helped inspire the Eccentric Ale. Now, if you notice, Earth and, of course, Pluto.
Well, Pluto's not a planet.
Yeah, Pluto's a dwarf planet.
Depending on who you ask.
No, it's a dwarf
Pluto's
planet.
a planet.
That's
Let's
not
be
planet.
real.
Yeah,
It's a dwarf
exactly.
planet.
Okay.
So, yeah,
There's a good
Earth
reason
doesn't
for
have
it,
one
too.
because you figure that's what we're most familiar with, and then neither does Pluto.
I really like these sort of creative series of beers, like
Yep.
the planets, and we
I
did the
agree.
Constellation
With
ones with
Weyerbacher.
Weyerbacher.
Yeah.
When we had Natalie on, and the Hexerai we talked about in the last episode with Saucony Creek, having the Hexerai, white magic, black magic, blue magic.
Right.
And I don't know. I just think it's a really cool thing. It's kind of.
I'm surprised they allowed them, or I mean, I don't know how far they've gotten with it, but the use of medicinal as a description or a marketing campaign.
Oh, yeah,
because
that's a good point.
The TTB in the States and a lot of places, they really kind of poo-poo anybody using the word strength or, medicinal or anything like that, because they don't want to cross-reference, quote-unquote, 2 different drugs or whatever you want to call it. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I'd be interested to know if that's actually what they're doing with it, or it could be a state
That's
thing.
a good point.
It's
Yeah.
interesting. Just curious.
Yeah, well, they're in Michigan, so they would
Yeah.
be different.
Well, Michigan's actually pretty conservative in that regard as
Are
well.
they?
So,
Yeah.
Wait, is Bell's Michigan?
Yeah, Kalamazoo.
Kalamazoo?
Yeah.
I don't know why I thought they were in New York.
Yeah.
Formerly Kalamazoo, and then Larry Bell wanted to get out of this stifling contract with Anheuser-Busch, spent millions to dissolve the company and come back as Bell's. So
Wow,
There you go.
I
Yeah.
don't know why I thought they were in New York. Well, the last story that I had is kind of lighthearted, not specific to one brand of beer, any news about anything like that.
See the headline from here.
So the headline that I have is Florida man calls 911 for wife throwing out beer.
man, that is an emergency.
Yes.
I would do that.
Carlos Bueno Mir, age 49, of West Palm Beach, Florida, called 911 a grand total of 7 times in one evening to report his wife for throwing out his
Not
beer.
just once, but 7 times.
Wow.
The official report reads that when officers arrived after the first call, Bueno Mir appeared intoxicated and told them that his wife had, quote, thrown out his beer. The officers instructed him that the situation was not an emergency and was advised to not call 911 unless there was an emergency. Bueno Mir called 911 again and became uncooperative with the operator, refusing to provide what his emergency was. Bueno Mir called 911 again and began yelling that a female outside had broken into 2 of his beers.
Broken
According to the report.
into his beer.
Yes.
Okay.
In total, Bueno Mir called 911 7 times within 4 hours.
Jeez.
He was arrested and charged with, quote, misuse of the 911 emergency system for making a false alarm or complaint or reporting false information.
That was actually the whole charge right there.
Yeah, exactly. That was the whole charge of it.
Because it only sounds remote, marginally made up.
Exactly, yeah.
Just a little bit.
Yeah. So if somebody,
broke into
quote,
my
breaks
beers,
into your beer, don't call 911 because they'll just laugh at you or arrest you. Yeah. So I figured we'd end on that lighthearted story.
Don't forget to lock your beers.
Yeah. Now, as we mentioned earlier, we are on location, not quite at South County. However, we are in York at J.R. Heap's studio in his
Second
basement.
order sound is what we call it.
Second order sound. I like that. The visual in the studio here is pretty cool. I like the setup of it. So we walk in and we come and upstairs, your house that we saw upstairs in the living room and everything is beautiful, by the way.
It's a work in progress, but it's
Yeah.
a nice
It
nice
looks
little-
really nice.
Nice house here in York. So.
Yeah. And then we come downstairs and there is what you would expect a cool basement sound studio to look like. There's a pool table that we're on that we mentioned earlier. There's a nice drum set in the background, a wall of guitars, and then a control room, which is how you know it's an official studio. There is a control room with a giant, what size monitor is that?
I think it's a 42.
Yeah, 42-inch monitor in there to load up all the tracks on so you can see every last detail that you need. So thank you for letting us come out to your
problem.
space. It's kind of refreshing yet confusing to not have to set up any of the equipment myself. But anyway, let's get to South County. So
Hey, yeah.
I saw, and Steph had written an article about South County in January,
Yeah.
right, for our website. You opened in 2011, right?
Yeah, July 1st of 2011 was the first day we started pouring beers and, trying to get the word out there. So.
Yeah. Had you been, the recipes that you had there, were they homebrew recipes that you...
One of them was the Americale is kind of like that long-standing homebrew recipe that I probably brewed way too many times to even mention at this point. I just always, Trogs Hopback was kind of like one of my first engagements with a Pennsylvania craft beer type of deal.
Cool.
I kind of started with Sierra Nevada, then maybe some, Sam Adams products, and then slowly started working my way more local. And then once I found out about Trogs and went up there, that beer really kind of caught me, as simple as it is, and especially, in today's beer world where, an amber in that regard is kind of like boring. They're like relic beers. They almost refer to them now that everything's like IPA to the wall and, oak barrel aged this with like 16 different wild plants in it, which are all great beers. But just to me, the simple amber has always been, and we do a dry hop with ours that kind of, augments that citrus flavor and everything on it. But, that was one of the first ones we came out with, and it's really one of the only homebrew recipes that ever kind of made it through. Everything else we've kind of just shot from the hips and rolled with. So
That's cool.
Now, when I visited, I believe you were working on a 7-barrel system.
6, 7 if I want to push it, and if I feel frisky, depending on what type of beer it is or how much overfoam I know I'm going to get out of the kettle. And that system's really a cobbled together Frankenstein out of old Grundys that were made in the 70s, actually from England, that I bought from a brew pub down in somewhere's in Texas. And so we brought those up and hacked them up and turned them into a kettle and a mash tun in that regard. And then it's I can push it to 7, but I try to brew about 6 because that's kind of the match out for my brights that I have now.
Are you hoping to expand, get bigger?
So we are in the process of getting some new equipment in. I actually go Wednesday up to New York to a manufacturer called Prospero, and they do a lot of Italian equipment. And so we're looking at a new 15-barrel steam system with them, some new 15-barrel tanks, a new 12-ounce bottling line. We previously had only been in 22-ounce packaging because it was easier for us to get into that package format. It was a little bit less labor-intensive, and it's just everything kind of worked in that regard. And we'd always done just the paper craft cases with, like, the label slapped on the side, which is, like, pretty typical for a lot of startups or specialty releases. But in a competitive market, there's a lot of breweries, a lot of great beer. So, the wall kaleidoscope, as I refer to it, is an ever-present thing that you really need to pay attention to with your marketing. So we're going to be going with the full color printed mother cartons and 12-ounce packaging, which will allow us to get into a lot more retailers. People are still even, somewhat unfamiliar with the 22-ounce format. And a lot of them will open it, and then maybe they don't want 2 beers, and so unless it's a really big beer or a specialty release where everybody's sharing or something like that, I can see the limitations on it. And that's why we're migrating out of that into something else.
So I know in the article Steph had written, there was a little bit of some legal hiccups when you went to open, and you weren't allowed to do growler fills, which was
and
something,
we still aren't,
and you
which
still
is
aren't.
something if we want to work with, we need to appeal. And basically, what happened was we're in a real small rural area of York County, and that area it's the brewery, and then if you look outside, it's just hundreds of acres of farmland. And a lot of people say the middle of nowhere is where really we're only 30 minutes from York and 20 minutes north of Bel Air, so we're actually kind of like in the center of everywhere. But when you go there, you feel like you're in Boone, North Carolina, or something, or South Carolina, down there. So when we went to open, naturally there was a lot of people that their experience with beer was nothing more than like the drunk uncle at Christmas, and light lager and everything else. So they didn't even realize that somebody could, much like artisan bread or meats or cheeses, could make beer on a small level and sell it to the public. And so we had a lot of kickback, mainly just people just scared of change, the typical time age story of being scared of change. And it even got as crazy when we were doing our borough meeting that I got accused, people are going to get drunk and die, and there's going to be blood on your hands. And it was just a really obscene, Jerry Springer episode of what was supposed to be a legal proceeding.
Wow.
And so, if you think what happens in big government, well, it happens in small government, too. It's just, so we did about 9 months of litigation, appealed, went to the York County deal there, and basically it got overturned and said, look, it's a viable deal. Everything's legal. You're going to have to let it through. Yeah. And so once we got past that, the only caveats that we had was they didn't want us doing growler fills. So we hope to appeal that. We do single bottles anyways, and they seem to have a problem with that. So I guess a growler is that much different.
Yeah, it seems.
And what really there was a woman there who was like a fellow property owner that she literally took like a Welch's grape juice jug, and she says they're going to be putting beer in these. And I guess she was trying to paint the image of drunks with old whiskey bottles over the arm. It was very archaic and colloquial, and it was just whatever. But we got past it, and since then the people that made noise we haven't heard from since, and the community's really received us. Even for just being a countryside community, people that want to seek out craft beer found us, and it's been pretty rad.
That's cool. So I was going to follow up and say, have you had any sort of residual animosity that you felt from the community after going through that whole process?
Literally, it's just in that regard, it's just been like a kind of a ghost story. It just kind of went away. Yeah. You know what I mean? And
one of those things everybody gets all riled up about for no good reason.
Yeah, change happens, and then they realize, oh wow, I guess I really don't care because we're open for 3 years. There's no zombies or dead people, and so so.
Must be doing something right.
Yeah, and we do live music there, a couple times a year. Cool. Kind of have like a big VIP event for our retailers and friends and family. Which we have affectionately named Heapstoberfest every year. So
cool. Like that.
It's like a big pit beef type thing with food and drink, and then a couple of the rock bands that we've done collaborations and releases with come out and play. So it's pretty rad.
Cool.
So with the new system coming in, are you going to be able to reach out to new markets and expand?
Absolutely. That's kind of the biggest drive. Is we hope to hit Northern Hartford and Baltimore County pretty heavy, Maryland. As much of PA as we can reach that we can responsibly get good, fresh, clean beer to. Definitely the Philly markets, probably work with Volkner up there in the north markets of Pennsylvania, and maybe try to get out there towards Pittsburgh. It's just some logistic stuff of getting beer out that way, stable and in good condition, and just with the number of brands that are out there, and still, Pennsylvania is still somewhat lacking in their care for beer, especially in package format, such as bottles. Most of our what they call retail distributors, your case stores, they let them sit on the shelves for 7 months at 70 degrees and they're baked.
Yeah.
And then a customer gets it and takes it home. And that's our one shot to show people that this is what we're doing. And then they pour vinegar in a glass. And if they're not super savvy and they can taste past it and say, wow, there was a really good beer in here.
Right.
For a new craft comer, they may be like, oh, this is horrible. I'm never buying this again.
And then we talked about this on an episode not that long ago pretty extensively about how distributors in Pennsylvania really is just a warehouse. And they just put beer in it. And they don't have the temperature regulation. It's hot in the summer. It's cold in the winter. And when the final customer, like you said, somebody who's not perhaps very knowledgeable about beer and the storage of beer and how it can be affected by not being cared for properly, they're going to see your name on the bottle and associate that with the off taste that they got.
For a lot of people, even believe it or not, 2014, a lot of people still view beer as a commodity like gasoline or bread.
Yeah.
In that regard. So So that culture is hopefully changing, and people are starting to become more and more aware of craft beer, and it's cool. It's great.
Yeah, especially as it becomes a little more popular. You figure the retailers or the wholesalers, if you will, you figure they would catch up, I guess.
And things have lightened up here in Pennsylvania with the beer laws, and I think they're on a course to continue to do so.
Yeah, I mean one of the biggest advents was for the manufacturer's license to be able to sell in any quantity, any format, any size, which is huge for the breweries. And there's still stuff on the table for the distributors to have the ability to go to 6-packs as opposed to cases only, which still makes no sense to me.
I never understood that. I always found that
because if you want to get 6-packs in Pennsylvania, usually it has to either be a brew pub, a brewery, or it has to have an R license for carryout. And that's kind of how the rules go, So hopefully they'll lift that, and there'll be more access to beer without having to, buy a case of something that maybe you don't like, and then you get burnt, and
that what particularly annoys me is I work right next to almost a distributor that only does cases, and I don't buy cases of beer. I buy 6-packs. I like to get mixed 6-packs or not growlers, but like bomber bottles of this and that.
Sure.
I'm not going to buy a whole case of beer most of the time, and so it is kind of annoying that you have two different places.
Yeah, I used to work
in case here. You can get a 6-pack.
I used to work in New Jersey, and it was great. I would just walk over after work to a Total Wine and just get mixed 6, and then happen to get like a bottle of whiskey in the same place that I would get my mixed 6 of beer, and it was amazing to be able to do that. It let me experiment with so many different brands and breweries that I never would have before.
Yeah, which is really the beer culture right now. It's just variety. I mean, which is actually one of the toughest challenges from our manufacturer perspective. Is like we'll put a keg on, or our sales guys with our actual distributor. We work with Brewery Products here in York is for the 4-county area. And they'll go in and be like, great, you like this beer, try this one. They're like, oh, no, that's cool. We tried one. Now I have, 785 other beers I want to make sure I get on tap, which is wonderful, but it makes it difficult for a local craft brewer who doesn't have maybe that old marquee name like Trogs or Victory to try to get more play, you know what I mean? And so that's a kind of another challenge, for younger breweries trying to get their stuff out.
Is that sort of the inspiration behind the Origin series that you're doing now? Bringing something new out all the time.
Yeah, exactly. We try to do it with the Origin series, and I haven't been able to do as much lately because of the expansion and stuff we're doing. But we're just still trying to kind of reinvent, new flavors that we're messing with and other stuff. And then a few of our better retailers that really support us will cut a couple of these kegs too, and we do a limited bottle release there at the brewery for folks, just to say, hey, here's some new ideas that we have, and we try to take that feedback and we store that and say this might be something we bring back later. I still kind of kept it to about 4 main beers, and I try to get overwhelmed. I'd rather do 4 great than 8 that are mediocre because it's just too hard to manage. Yeah. And with my beers, I tend to use a lot of different yeast strains because to me, yeast is beer. I mean, you can pretty much do anything else figuratively, and it all comes down to the yeast. And if that's not right, the difference between okay, good, and maybe great and wonderful beer lives and dies in the yeast, in my opinion. It's just it's a brilliant, brilliant organism that does so much, and that's why I feel that there's so many different strains out there. Some breweries will do like a house character or like a house ale yeast, which is great, but you really have to push the other end of the process harder, which I feel maybe limits you because you're really having to push it so hard one way or the other just to get a distinct difference that you're not allowing what maybe a new yeast culture could do to really work with that beer. And the yeast and biotransformation is amazing to me, and how much it actually works with the ingredients that the yeast are fermenting and changing those flavors and compounds and which is kind of the super cool nerdy science part of it is trying to rodeo that to the ground and be creative. It's pretty fun. So
have you gotten your hands on any new hop strains?
Yeah, we have a new variety that our Windham we've been finishing with. We had some trouble getting Crystal on a regular basis at a fair price, which is what we finish and dry hop our Windham with. So Peterborough Farms is one of our suppliers that we buy direct from, has a new variety that they're trying to market much in the way that Hop Union is with like Amarillo and Citra and some of those more proprietary strains that literally have like a serial number next to it type of thing because they're actually trademarked and licensed. So they have a variety called Belma, which is really new to the scene, which is a pretty brilliant hop. It's a complete down-the-middle dual-purpose hop. 10% alpha on it with a lot of notes of berry, a little bit of citrus, some flower, and it's kind of a chameleon of a hop because depending on what you're brewing with, it tends to take on and complement whatever varieties you're brewing with. Oh, okay. So it kind of sits in the background and augments. It does a nice job, or at least my experience with it, it kind of augments. And if you brew only with it, it's a very pleasant hop, but it's somewhat benign. It kind of just falls back. Whereas if you augment it, and I use the kind of like the Jelly Belly analogy. When they make flavors, if you want to make a Jelly Belly taste like a shoe, they actually look at the carboxyl chain of what went, what's going on that makes that taste like a certain way of leather. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So with hops, your myrcene, your farcene, your curcumin, all those levels. When you start playing chemist and mixing those inadvertently, new flavors come about. Mm-hmm. So you have citrus in one area, and then you have a hop that maybe has berry, and you mix them. You can get that kind of stone fruit flavor that only you get from Galaxy or Citra, or it's just kind of a cool way to kind of work around the limited availability of hops as well.
It's kind of like if you have a pineapple Jelly Belly and a coconut Jelly Belly.
Correct, yep.
And you want to make a pina colada, but you don't want to buy the pina colada Jelly Belly. You simply put together
that's-
Or the pina colada Jelly Belly is not available.
Yeah, that's a great analogy because that's what with hops. I think single hop beers are great, but really I like doing multiple blends and mixing them together, and it really to me makes more dynamic hop profiles that than let's just say a single Amarillo only type beer, which I've had good versions, no doubt.
And I think with single hop beers, you don't get many surprises.
Yeah, exactly.
When you try one that you've never had, it's a single hop beer. You kind of know what
Not
it's going to taste like.
Not too complex, but it's pretty straightforward.
And it's great for just if you're not really looking for something, super. I'm going to drink this beer and really pay attention to it, or something I just want to drink just to kind of hang out, whatever. But yeah, I think you're right. Multiple hops gets you a lot.
Yeah, I think you almost have to. I mean, there's some beers, lagers, and even with our ESB, we don't really use too many strains or varieties of hops there, but more often than not, varieties of spice of life. So.
Now, I have a question about your distribution, trying to get into retailers and everything. So if you're in South York County, are you able to get South County at like a Wegmans or anything like that?
Not quite that level yet, only because we're small. We previously
Right.
and to date only been running like a little 6-barrel system there, as well as just there is some market saturation. Naturally, just there's a lot of great beers out there, a lot of guys kind of coming up, giving it a go. Our biggest kind of where we meet people in the middle is obviously Brewfest. We people get to try our beers and sample them, and then mainly draft. I mean, the bars and the beer bars that we go and we push. Hey, here's some local stuff. Give it a try, and they're usually pretty good about putting it on and giving it a whirl. So hopefully with the 12-ounce packaging, like Giant here in York just actually got a license, and they actually
good.
Their management up there is wonderful because they have everything kind of like segmented by style guideline, porter, IPA, pale, and all that other stuff, and they keep a lot of great width of variety as well, which I was surprised for a Giant. A lot of people are like, oh, that's going to be the end of it when Giant and Walmart start getting beers, and maybe to a degree, but with the way they're doing it, they're turning a lot of people on to beer because the average person that maybe went into Giant that never had craft beer, before is going to see that, and it's a great way for them to get into it for their first round.
Now, I had a question that came up from reading Steph's article. You went to brewing school in Chicago.
Yeah, I went out to Siebel out there and did their Concise Brewing Sciences. For a number of reasons, I was making pretty good beers, but I figured, okay, well, I'm going to maybe try to open a brewery and expect people to buy this, so I want to meet them in the middle and make sure I know that what I'm doing is at least a step towards being the best brewer I can. So I did that out there, and then I've also had the wonderful luxury of brewing with a lot of great brewers. Trogs, I got to go up there and work in the cellar with Tim and in the brew house with Bruce. And then the last batch of Nugget Nectar this year, which was pretty rad, working on that big expensive system. And they're really great guys, colleagues that I've known. And, it's just great to go in and see what they're doing and see even, they make mistakes in-house just because stuff happens and people are human. And it shows you that it's all just a collective effort trying to make good beer. So Matt Kesey at Springhouse, he kind of helped me get started a little bit. He was nice enough to have me in and, did the beer school. And the thing was, the beer school just kind of reaffirmed, with the age of the internet, there's a lot of information out there. If you know how to read all of it, put it in what I call the filter box, and there's a couple eminent truths that come through. Because that's kind of the biggest problem, obviously in the homebrew world. There's a lot of experiences people have. Maybe they don't understand why it's happening, or half truths or stuff like that, because everybody's learning and collectively. So some people might get some kind of misinformation, as they're coming up, and they're wondering why their beers are struggling. And then you kind of, if you're in a what I call like a pro or maybe in a more experienced brewer setting, you're like, oh, that's why, and suddenly it makes perfectly clear sense as to why that's going on. So yeah, that's the extent of my formal training was Siebel, and then a couple bigger breweries that allowed me to come in and really kind of cut my teeth and help them out and do stuff like that. So
how long was the course at Siebel?
On site was a couple weeks, and then they did an off-site version. It was like a what is it? Citrus or what's that called? starts with a C. I don't know. It's like an in the classroom learning thing. It's like where you can do over video feeds, and I forget what the name. It was a popular name. I don't know, whatever it was called. Basically, I dialed in, I saw the instructor, they saw us, and it was like a collective classroom and a bunch of like little mini
cool.
picture-in-pictures, and then there was like a 3-week thing there that was tested, and we had course material and all that other stuff, so it was pretty rad. A lot of it felt like something maybe more like, a bigger brewery would do, a lot of these complicated algorithms and how to blend tanks and stuff that not a lot of small brewers are doing, but at least it was there for reference and to get it, familiarized with it, and plus the basics, but it was pretty good. I enjoyed it.
That's awesome.
Now, your location, I know when Steph had visited you, your brother, Chris, runs South County Automotive on the same property.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
And I guess that whole complex sort of been in your family for quite a while.
Yeah, the compound there has been there for almost a decade, and so it's 3.5 acres of commercial industrial that we bought. It was an old logging operation that we had. We're fortunate enough that the owner financed with us, which gave us a great chance to have a property that, kind of being young entrepreneurs and everything else, we might have had a tougher time traditionally financing and getting into. They gave us a chance, and then we converted into a florist, a hair salon. We have a firearms dealer down there, pizza shop, and then the brewery, and then my brother's sports performance and auto shop. So it's kind of like a trap canyon, It's like if zombies become real, I think
go
we're
there.
set.
You're good.
Get a car fixed.
I read somewhere once it said if there is a zombie apocalypse, the best place to go is either Walmart or Sam's Club.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
they have guns,
there.
they have food, they have
Yeah,
everything.
that's funny.
That's really true.
Although they don't have beer, not in PA anyway.
Well, not in the ones in PA.
Yeah. So I think
So grab your beer and go to Walmart.
no, or go to the Heaps compound.
There you go.
Yeah, exactly, because they've also got beer.
That's true.
And also, when Steph had spoken to you before, you were working a full-time job. Are you still working outside of the brewing?
No, I finally, after
that's
3 years of being open, I was working a full-time job. Had some other life changes that were kind of like a curveball for me, so I really had to continue doing the day job thing while trying to run a brewery in the background. So the 7 days a week, anywhere from 40 to 80 hours has been my life for close to the last 3 years, and it does wear you thin.
I'm working right now 2 jobs, and I had 3 before, and I was doing 60, 70 hours. It's rough. It's terrible. Yeah,
and that's a struggle. I mean, maybe a lot of people might hear in my voice, not a hint of dissension, but maybe a hint of reality that, beer's great and has this beautiful, wonderful, romantic quality about it, but at the end of the day, it's a business, man. I mean, it's like anything else. And so I'd say the biggest struggle that I think everybody who goes from like a homebrew level, maybe they brewed at a brewery for a while and then they have the ability to open a craft brewery, the trouble for them is like that 2-year mark where you really start to, I don't want to say lose the love for it, but you have to really reinvent and find it again because you're getting so wore to the bone being undercapitalized for a lot of startups and trying to be passionate about doing beers and not just being like, oh, I just want to go home. I'm exhausted. I love this, but it's starting to wear on me. And so one of the big invigorating factors is when I met my new business partners and finding somebody that cared about what I was doing, was willing to share that burden and that load and help a little bit financially. It's like a light switch went off, and it's like it was like zooming me back to like 4 years ago when I was up till 2 a.m. researching and just hungry to do it, and it kind of reinvigorated that. So it was great. It was somewhat of a little mini payoff for me, and so but we still got to continue to work really, really hard to be relevant and new and fresh in the craft beer scene. So
yeah, I can imagine it's just a tireless.
It never ends. Yeah, I mean, it's you're sitting there staring at the ceiling at 2 o'clock in the morning, wondering like, oh man, how do I do this? Or how are we going to get that done? Or the bank bill's coming, and I got to get beer here, and that's some of the realities of it. But the Brew Fest, and when people come in, or you see really complimentary ratings on different sites, and you're like, wow, somebody took their hard-earned dollar and bought my beer and gave that response, and then that's when you're like, that's cool. I'm sharing that with people.
Yeah.
That's what's great. So,
and speaking of the work putting into it, you pretty much built most of your, if not all of your facility.
Yeah, I mean, I have a fairly colorful background, and part of that includes being a general contractor and, knowing how to build and plumb and do all that stuff. So we have a 4,000 square foot production facility, which is the common name pole barn or Morton building or whatever. We built from the ground up. I mean, from the stone to the concrete to the three-phase electric all the way to the roof. We did everything ourselves, and a lot of it I did myself. For my past experience, which was a huge help expense-wise, not having to pay somebody to do that.
Imagine.
And the area we live in, it's a little bit more lenient much. If we were downtown York, we'd have to have a lot of inspections with licensed contractors, whereas where we're at, I guess in the countryside, it's just more laid back. And basically, if the work is correct into code, they'll go ahead and inspect it, whether or not there's a license for it or not. Some of that might be changing, so I think we kind of skipped a curveball there, but we're able to get it done and save a lot of money. And when you stand back and look and see a building like that and a monument to that work, and it's definitely gratifying for sure.
Absolutely. I don't know that I've ever built anything that complicated on my own. I can't imagine.
Well, and when I visited the brewery, and you were nice enough to take me back and on a little tour, and I could feel your passion and your pride, and and the way that you spoke about building that little bottling line with your brother, and making those mash tuns. It was neat to see, and it was refreshing, and I was really excited for you, and then to try the beers, and they lived up to your passion. And
I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, that's always the ultimate goal, is hoping that the beers that we're making, and I mean, we've had a couple snafus naturally. It's just, we're trying to wrangle an organism that wants to do things, or we want an organism to do things that it naturally doesn't want to do itself. So there's a variable there that you're always trying to wrestle between, and that's that quality control and repeatability. And so, the fact that we literally on cobbled together hocus pocus Frankenstein equipment, as I call it, have been able to make some really decent beers that we've gotten compliments and have, I felt, stood up to some of the beers that are out there, makes me feel like, wow, what the hell can I do with a nice system like an Italian system from Prospero, as far as hitting the numbers right and just, not having to spend 16 hours to do a double brew day and stuff like that, kind of shorten those times up. Should be pretty cool. I'm definitely excited about that.
Are you going to do any barrel aging? I know you had mentioned
God,
that.
I've been wanting to do that for forever, but it's just been kind of like a time and a money thing. We have a beer that I've done some pilots of in the past, and we're going to kind of hopefully try to be rebrewing or at least getting started. The biggest thing with barrel aging, it's hard to test. Because you're brewing a beer, and it's like the hurry up and wait game, you know what I mean?
Fingers crossed.
And and hopefully you get an infection in the barrel, and then that can happen. And doing the right amount of barrel aging, the right type of toast, the right type of barrel wine, whiskey, New American oak, unbourboned or whatever, kind of fresh. And so we have one beer that's named after my grandfather called Virgil that we're doing, and I'm dubbing it an oak barrel aged heritage ale.
Oh.
So there's a curveball for a style it's not recognized. So it's kind of like barley wine, but it has roast and a lot of other characters, and we're going to be doing it in 9-year Buffalo Trace barrels.
Okay.
So we're working with those guys directly down there to get some, literally, they're going to empty it, bung them, put them on the pallet, get them to us, and then they're going to be filled with beer the minute they get there. So we're really super interested in doing that beer. 10% alcohol, oak barrel aged, chewy, nice, full.
Nice, big one.
And we think that's a beer that we're probably going to put in the barrels and let that ride for about 6 months.
Cool.
So that's one I hope that once we get the new system up and running, we're probably going to do 4 of the 50, whatever they are, 55-gallon barrels, a little over 200 gallons, and then we're going to do a special release for that beer probably next year. And that'll be the start of our barrel age program. We'll see how that goes, and we'll kind of keep working it from there. So,
very cool. Well, again, we'd like to thank you for having us come over to your space and welcome us into literally your house.
Yep.
Now, something that we do, for anybody who's not familiar, maybe if you're not familiar, Wayne always prepares a little game for us. Wayne, what do we have today?
Well, today, it's faster than a game of Monopoly.
Faster than a game of Monopoly.
Stronger than a unicycle. Able to leap over small dogs in a single bound. It's happy, it's fun. It's happy, fun time. We've covered beers brewed with off-the-wall ingredients from beard yeast and baseball bats to frankincense, myrrh, and moon dust. But today we're going to tone down the weirdness a bit and explore some brews that have unique, if not so outlandish, ingredients that stray but not too far from water, barley, hops, and yeast in another edition of There's Weird in My Beer. And as per usual, I will give you the name of a beer, a brief description, and a batch of multiple choice options of what it is that's in that beer. And we are going to begin to my left.
Again, on location, I'm on your left. Pretty convenient.
You almost were. Steph had to put us in our proper place. So, no, you can't sit there because then Dan's not on your left. But now you are on my left, and you go first. So the first beer here, this beer is called Aramida 6. I may be pronouncing that incorrectly. It's Aramida 6. It's a 6.5% American Wild Ale, which we all know is Dan's favorite style.
Totally.
This was the 6th in Avery Brewing Company's Taproom Only series, released in late 2013. It's a blonde barrel-aged sour, has a lactic tang and an earthy Brett aroma. When concocting the recipe, Avery's Brewers spent weeks trying different fruits in the beer before they settled on what? Was it A, oranges, B, limes, C, plums, or D, grapes?
I'm going to go with A.
You're going to go with A, oranges. Steph, what do you think's in that beer?
I'm going to say plums.
You're going to say C, plums. And JR, which one do you think it is?
Not being totally familiar with it, but if I was doing it in the way you described it, I would also go with plums.
You would also go with
It is an
plums?
interesting twist, something I'd like to play with, yeah.
Okay, that would be an interesting twist. Unfortunately, it's not what they did. Nobody was correct on that one. The answer was B, limes. It's
Interesting.
aged in neutral oak white wine barrels and infused with key limes, actually. This beer sounds delicious. I would really like to try it. But what is a key lime? I'm going to tell you.
A lime that has keys.
Key limes are smaller and have a thinner skin and skew more yellowish in hue than the more commonly known Persian limes, which are the globulous green fruit we usually imagine when we're thinking of limes. The name comes from its association with the Florida Keys, where it is best known as the flavoring ingredient in key lime pie. It is also known as West Indian lime, bartender's lime, Omani lime, or Mexican lime. Nobody right on that one. Ermita 6 with key limes. And we're going to move along with Steph going first on this one, and this beer is called Positive Contact. This is a Dogfish Head brew that you could loosely call a wit beer. It sits at 9% alcohol. It has a bright, spritzy character on autumnal herbal quality. It's infused with roasted farro, a handful of cayenne peppers, a late dose of fresh cilantro, and A, bananas, B, squash, C, apples, or D, onions.
Yeah, if anybody,
I
You
know
know
that
what's
you
would
sad?
know this.
I've seen
I
this.
was
I've
at
had
the
it.
release party for this
Were
beer.
you really?
I really should know
And you
this.
don't know. You're going to kick
I
yourself,
remember
too.
the cilantro. I was like, don't say that. What were the ingredients again?
The
I'm
others.
sorry.
What was the
options.
answer? I'm sorry.
What was the answer again?
It's the ingredients that I told you were roasted farro, cayenne
No,
peppers.
the options.
Oh, the options. I'm sorry. Bananas, squash, apples, or onions. Bananas, squash, apples, or onions.
Onions.
Steph's going to say D, onions. JR, do you know which one it is?
I would go with squash.
You're going to go with squash, letter B. And Dan?
I'm going to go with apples because I really want that to be true.
Oh, right. Well, your wish is my command, or is the reality, or...
One of the above.
You're correct,
Hey!
sir. Yes, it is apples. It's Fuji apples, to be specific.
Oh, yes.
It's a limited release beer. Was part of Dogfish Head's music series of beers. It was an amalgamation of beer and cider. It was sort of an apple cider inspired
right.
beer. Sam Callione and Dan, the automator of Deltron 3030, teamed up to create Positive Contact based on Dan's favorite ingredients and Dogfish Head's innovative brewing practices. It takes its name from a key track on the alternative hip-hop supergroup's Freshman album and was released in 2012, along with a 10-inch vinyl EP of 4 new remixes and a list of Deltron 3030 inspired recipes from a small group of renowned chefs. So were you at the release party? Did you get you didn't have the special vinyl with the recipes?
No, I didn't get the
Okay.
No, you had to
There was
buy,
like a
case to get it or
yeah, and it was
something.
an early thing that they only did on like the first couple that they sold. I was reading on the website, but yes, the answer was
This is what
apples.
happens when you drink too many different
Fuji.
beers.
Yeah, I
just
know you don't remember.
You just don't remember.
Yes. And this is our third and final beer, and JR is going to go first on this one, and this is called the Blue Brew. It's a bitter from a British brewery whose name is spelled like Belvoir, Belvoir, but is actually pronounced, I'm not kidding, Beaver. Kind of like the Bucket Woman, it's bouquet. Anybody ever saw that show?
Nope.
This brew is a unique, smooth, full-bodied flavor with a creamy texture derived from the infusion of A, cheese, B, yogurt, C, avocado, or D, pureed Smurfs.
What?
Cheese, yogurt, avocado, or pureed Smurfs.
Only because the one that's relative for me would probably be avocado as a sugar source and a flavor component.
Okay, so we can go with C, avocado. Dan, what's your guess?
Ooh. There's a very scientific reason behind that. Cheese, yogurt, avocado, or Smurfs.
Yes. And the first two I can rule out for various reasons, only because lipids and fats won't survive in beer, so it gets it down to 2, and the last one's preposterous, so that's where I
Or
arrived
is
at.
it?
It may not. I don't know.
Or is it?
I've never had Smurfs, so I'm
Or
not
is it
sure.
you don't know? Yes. Well, it is a delicacy.
You have a real. I'm going avocado.
You're gonna go
There's a
avocado
really
as well?
good scientific reason
Okay,
there.
that was a very good argument, Steph. Are you going to agree as well?
Sure, I'll say
C's all
avocado.
around. You're incorrect. It is actually cheese.
What?
Wow.
Let me tell you, it's
that's
Stilton
interesting.
cheese, which is a popular English cheese that is made in both blue and white varieties. The blue brew is made by mixing 25% Stilton whey to 75%
Oh.
unfermented
Yes, it
wort.
is.
Is it BLEU?
No.
Okay.
No, it's not that kind of blue. So yeah, the whey is mixed with the unfermented wort. The wort is then fermented normally with a live brewer's yeast to produce a smooth and creamy chestnut-colored beer with a unique blend of flavors. Stilton cheese. It is said that Stilton cheese smells of feet and produces bizarre dreams when consumed before bed. I don't know if the beer shares those characteristics. The Blue Brew with Stilton cheese, and that is our third and final beer. And our scoreboard's looking a little sad here. Although to be fair, we only had 3 questions, so I suppose.
And on that, I mean, for me, on that last one as a brewer, you know, when they say it's made with Stilton cheese, it's really not even made because really they're taking the whey, which
Yeah.
is a byproduct before it even ferments.
Ferments, exactly.
And naturally, it's just a protein at that point. But
So
getting creative, stretching the marketing. I mean, hey,
a little bit of room for appeal there, I suppose.
hey, there you go.
But unfortunately, Steph and JR, you are sitting at the bottom with 0 points. Dan,
Been there before.
you,
too.
you are today's big winner with one single solitary point.
Champion, hell of a
How
win.
does this keep happening?
Because I've made the game shorter to save time, and you've been getting luckier. So it's a combination of those
right.
two things.
I'll
because
take
to be
it.
perfectly honest with you, JR had very good reasons for his answers,
know.
particularly the cheese ones. Because
And
you're
I
right, when you
should
put
get a
any
negative
sort of like
point for
oily
getting
lipid
the-
thing,
Yeah,
like this is
lipid
not
fat.
going to work
Contact
in beer.
wrong.
I also thought yogurt, because I know yogurt is often used to sour beers.
Yeah.
But and I know that's sort of like a,
mainly the acidifying bacteria that goes into yogurt.
But it's not generally used as something to impart flavor or even like mouthfeel
Yeah, I mean,
or anything
once again,
like
it
that.
would have to be something that yogurt, milk, dairy,
Yeah.
fats, that type of thing. That's why in milk sugars are used as opposed to actual milk.
Actual milk,
and,
right, for like a milk stout.
Peanut butter, they usually use the extract as opposed to the actual peanut butter, and then you can kind of fake certain compounds by blending vanillas and other stuff in the background to kind of like assume that flavor without actually having to use the real deal, which
actual thing,
would
which
turn
one?
the beer, like bacon beers and stuff like that. And I heard Matt Kesey at Springhouse use real bacon because he literally just kept baking it down to where it was only the protein left and all the fat was gone.
Oh, really?
I don't know how long it's stored, but it definitely got some killer reviews on that maple bacon porter
I would
that
like
he
to
did.
try that.
Yeah, I mean
Absolutely
it's. I mean he's definitely doing some Willy Wonka stuff for sure. I mean he's
Willy
having fun,
Wonka stuff.
and he did work for Lancashire Laboratories too. So maybe that's his trick up his sleeve.
Cool. Well, I'm confused how I won again,
Hey,
especially
but
with
you won.
scientific reasoning on
Because you
somebody's
said
side.
apples. Well, what did JR say on that one? On positive contact, he said
Squash.
squash, which was a good guess.
The only reason I went is because where the flavor profile was going with the cilantro and
Right.
the peppers
and the mention of autumnal herbal
Yeah,
qualities.
exactly.
Yeah,
so that's where
yeah.
I would have went with it.
Which
but
is
hey.
why I picked squash, because I thought that would make sense with those other
Oh, you
ingredients.
trickster, you.
I was actually a little tricksy on this one. Usually I'm not so tricksy. Usually I just try to be
Tricksy
goofy.
false.
I was tricksy
All right.
and false. I tried to send you down after red herrings, false alleys, and all that sort of thing. And I guess it worked.
Yeah, anyway.
Anyway, moving
Well,
on.
let's
as
learn
Steph
something
says.
else.
Know your beers.
Steph, what do we have?
So I figured today we would talk about one of the styles that we'll be drinking in a little bit. And again, the beers are sitting here staring me in the face, and I feel like we should have opened one by now.
Well, technically, the
'cause I'm
labels
really
are facing
thirsty.
Wayne, so I think they're staring him in the face.
They are.
Well,
They're making
they
eyes
look
at me.
delicious. So we're going to talk about the ESB today. So the ESB, or Extra Special or Strong Bitter, is an English pale ale.
Premium bitter too.
Premium bitter, yes.
Yep, that's also a descriptor.
Or a fairly special bitter.
So, a little history. Strong bitters can be seen as a higher gravity version of best bitters, although not necessarily more premium, since best bitters are traditionally the brewer's finest product. Since beer is sold by strength in the UK, these beers often have some alcohol flavor, perhaps to let the consumers know that they're getting what they paid for. In England today, ESB is a brand unique to Fuller's. In America, however, the name is used to describe a malty, bitter, reddish standard strength, for the US, English type ale.
The typical aroma you'll get from an ESB is moderate hop aroma from traditional UK hops, and there's also caramel aromas and fruity esters. The appearance can range anything from golden to deep and copper, and they're quite clear with a white to off-white head. Flavor-wise, medium high to medium bitterness, balanced by the malt flavors and caramel malt sweetness. Secondary malt flavors can be described as nutty or biscuity, for example, and these add some complexity. Medium-bodied mouthfeel with low to moderate carbonation, and stronger versions may have a slight alcohol warmth. Overall, an average strength to moderate strong English ale. Drinkability is a critical component to this style. Emphasis is still on the bittering hop addition as opposed to the aggressive middle and late hopping seen in American ales. A rather broad style that allows for considerable interpretation by the brewer. More evident malt and hop flavors than a special or best bitter. Ingredients typically used: pale ale malts, amber, and crystal malts. They might use a touch of black malts for color adjustments. Might use sugar adjuncts, corn or wheat, and English hops are most typical, although American and European varieties are becoming more common. They use a characteristic English yeast, and Burtoned versions use medium to high sulfate water. Some commercials example, of course, the Fuller's ESB, Young's Ramrod, Samuel Smith's Old Brewery Pale Ale, Bass Ale, Whitbread Pale Ale, Black Sheep Ale, Moreland Old Speckled Hen, Red Hook ESB, Anderson Valley Boont ESB, and the list goes on and on. And of course, Sessions ESB by South County Brewing.
Yay.
Woohoo.
Well, speaking of that, as they're all staring at least one of us in the face.
Beer me! Beer me! Beer me! Beer me!
All right, so what are we starting with?
Since we're on that topic, I guess we'll get into the ESB there.
Yes.
Sounds good.
So you describe this as a true session beer brewed with English malt, hops, and yeast, and you suggest even pairing this with pub food.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, when we set out to do an ESB, mainly because we didn't just want to do another American Pale Ale. That's what every brewery's done since the history of startups and breweries and everything else. And I felt like, the ESB is a style that is kind of like an unsung hero in what is like the quintessential beery flavor that is. So,
and you use the Fuller's yeast strain for this, correct?
It's a derivation of that strain. I mean, it's kind of rumored that it is, comes either from the Fuller's strain or of a strain that Fuller's maybe had pulled their house character from and made their yeast. So we work with Brewery Science out of Colorado. I don't know if it's Longmont or where they're at, but basically they're a smaller independent group of lab guys that are selling yeast to brewers. So it's an alternative to White Labs or Y Yeast, and we use their ESB strain basically. So
I like that it's sessionable, and I like that you're seeing a lot more different styles being done as sessionable versions.
I mean, I'm a huge fan of session beers myself, just because you don't want the flavor train to stop, as I call it, and it's like with the ABV arms race that has been out there, it just gets to be too much when you're just trying to enjoy yourself. Yeah, what we try to do with this one here is we actually use a floor turned or a hand turned floor malt from Baird's and Sons. So it's actually an heirloom family malt that we use, and I actually use this. Maris Otters is the industry term for it for a lot of our beers, or I split it half and half depending on the flavor profile I'm looking for, and it produces a rich, unmistakable malt flavor with a little bit of nuttiness, some toast in the background. So yeah, we're using the English base malt, a touch of other kind of specialty malts here and there just to give it the color that we need. We were originally using all UK hops, and I was having a hard time getting those at a decent price and with good availability. So I started looking at Willamette, which really was just a triploid hybrid of the hops that we were using. So I was inadvertently just making Willamette myself.
Right.
So I thought, well, hell, this stuff's all over the place. Yeah. It's not that expensive. And when I brewed the beer with it, it was virtually identical.
Wow.
And actually gave me a little bit more of an earthy herb kind of character, a little bit more of that crisp snap that I actually enjoy in the beer.
Right.
We also use Demerara sugar in it, which gives it that dry crispness and also gives it a touch of almost like toffee sweetness as it warms, which would have been typical of an ESB back then. They would have used raw sugars just to try to not.
Oh, okay, right.
It was kind of that what maybe the bigger brewers use rice for to get that really crisp, light air to it. I tend to find that Demerara sugar does a really great job of that, but not getting into the cidery profiles that like refined sugar can give you at sometimes. So
I like that it definitely starts out with the malty
Yeah.
characteristics, and then it does at the end come in with that.
and this guy here,
little
as
bit
we're
of
drinking it,
earthiness
I'd
and
say this to the touch of the hand, it's probably closer to 55 degrees. It's actually warmed up now that it's been sitting. So if we're going to get real true to form about it, this is what it, flavor wise, what it came off the cask with, and
right.
like I said, it has that malt sweetness.
And you do get that touch of toffee.
Yeah, just and even what's interesting as the beer ages, that actually will start to push towards a cacao note.
Oh yeah,
Like almost borderline chocolate. It's really interesting that once the beer, I'm talking like a year out, like I've actually just let them rest and totally oxidized, totally blown out, but it'll actually pick up like that toffee will kind of morph as it oxidizes and actually goes in like in my palate almost like a cocoa nib, just a touch of that. So yeah, it's a complex beer. It's great. It's only 4.5% alcohol, so it's a great session beer, and we've gotten a lot of compliments even from. In our area, there's a lot of Welsh that are familiar, obviously, with sessionable beers, especially from the UK, and they said that this competes right up there with Fuller's and Brains and stuff like that. So I was like, wow,
That's a good compliment. Yeah,
my little
absolutely.
dinky brewery in the middle of nowhere's, USA postage stamp town is getting compliments from people who know what really, really good pub ale tastes like, and I love it with just about anything, to be honest. It's just a great go-to.
It's got a ton of flavor, and it's nice to have a ton of flavor at a low ABV like that.
And the recipe on it, good friends of mine are like, oh my god, let's look at the recipe, and I showed it to them. It's almost like they're disappointed because there's just not that much going on, really.
Right,
in the end,
yeah.
it's like 3 malts, 1 hop, and 1 yeast strain, and that's it.
Then you get
And you get the clarity, the richness, and everything else.
Do you do anything with your water when you're brewing this?
Yeah. That's definitely a very, very valid point there. We actually push the sulfate profile, so we harden the water quite a bit. I don't so much focus like a lot of people will really try to hit like every number, match the exact Edinburgh water profile or UK profile or whatever it is. I just try to make sure that I'm a 2-to-1 ratio in the favor of the sulfides to try to really get that bite and that crispness for either this beer, any drier beer, or any real hoppy beer that I'm doing. I kind of do a 2-to-1 ratio to sulfides to chloride, and that's what gives me that bite and that snap. Alternately, if I was doing a really malty beer, I would literally just reverse that, and I would back down the sulfite end of it and actually push the chloride or that roundness with that and go to 2-to-1 in the opposite direction for barley wines and porters and stuff like that.
So you're really adjusting for the style that you're making rather than trying to imitate a specific geographic
really,
area.
and really just trying to get snappy or round one way or the other.
Right.
Well, and that's why certain geographical areas were known for certain types of
Right.
beer.
Because the water
Absolutely.
was
Because of
given
the water,
to it.
the natural water.
And like for instance, Mackenzie, where he's at, he's on a huge lime bed. So his water is as tough as titanium. I mean, it's amazing. I mean, his heating elements would just get chewed up over there, and he really it fought him quite a bit, even to this day. So he has to, I forget how often he has to put heating elements in his hot liquor tank because it just looks like white oxalated scale in there, and it's. But that just goes to show, even in our area, we have water that's literally the softest I've ever seen, but yet not 40 minutes away, it's the hardest you could ever find
opposite, yeah.
geographically. So it's
Yeah.
that's a terroir. What maybe the dirt gives to grapes and wine, we primarily I think would get from water in a lot of respects.
Right, yeah.
Or what we do with the water, maybe, or what we're
Yeah.
trying to imitate. So
That's true. Yeah. And it's not something people really think about too much with beer.
they either
know?
don't think about it, or most dudes, that I know, and some homebrewers, they just like glaze over, like, oh my god, you read Zemil, is it Zemil Janishev's
Yep.
water book? How do you pronounce it?
Zemil.
Sorry, I butchered that, man. I apologize.
Being a chef.
But yeah, you know what I mean? It's like you start reading, you're like, oh my god, my head hurts. And then what you really kind of get from that is that those are the 2 core components that you want to focus on is that ratio of sulfate to chloride and how you bounce back and forth. At least my takeaway from it, and
Right.
that's really worked for me. I'm sure on a higher level or at a brewery that's far more intelligent than mine in many respects, they probably monitor every level, but I just focus on those main 2 as the primary focus that we can do.
Yeah, I really like it. I know it's kind of brief compared to everything that was just said.
Wow, that's such an eloquent
I know.
description.
And I tell you what,
really
if
like
after all that's all I got, we're doing good. That's cool too, man.
No, it's a good go-to
yeah.
comforting beer that you can have with dinner. You can
Yep.
have if you just
Yep.
want a beer.
Yep.
It's
And it's, in a world of superplex, hopsy, this, that, every other pun you can imagine, I think that, there are times when there's, like I was talking about Trogs with the hopback, maybe beers that are sort of relic and being forgotten about. There's something to be said for like an in-the-pocket beer that's just super, super clean and so well made that it's just, remarkable in that regard.
Yeah. And I think as well as like a trend towards like sessionable type beers and kind of moving away from the big IPAs that sort of exploded along with craft beer.
The palate wreckers, yeah.
Yeah, I think I just totally lost my train of thought.
I think
It
we should
happens.
go on to the next beer. That's
Yeah.
what I think.
You can circle back to that.
Fair enough.
Round 2, fight.
Yeah. Ding.
So the next one we're going to get into is our Windhand IPA, which is a pretty exciting beer for us. We're in a music studio, so it obviously gives you maybe a foray into some of my other hobbies and what I do. So I was down at I forget what it's called, Autumn Scream Doom or something like that. It's like this little thing they do down in Baltimore where it's like everything's kind of wrapped around anything that may have stemmed from Black Sabbath. Mm-hmm. And so every band that remotely sounds like that's droney and whatever, which is I'm a huge 70s rock and roll, sex rock, doom kind of fan. That's what I do. It's what I really enjoy, along with some other stuff. These cats, Windhand, with a female singer no less, Dorothea Cottrell, who is just memorizing with this very eerie, haunting sound that. When you see that it's a female singing, it makes sense. But when you first listen to it, you can't place it. It's a very original kind of sound. So I saw them play and was blown away by it. And then I said to my friend, I was like, "Well, it's going to be about 4 months, and they're going to be signed to a major label." And lo and behold, they got signed to Relapse. And I had spoken to them just before that point about doing a beer for those guys. So I was like, something this cool's got to have its own beer. And they were totally stoked about it. Relapse, the label was stoked about it, and so we did this IPA for these guys, and it's done really, really well. And we're working on trying to get it down in the Staunton and Richmond area because those guys are from Virginia, or I think most of them are. And it's just a nice collaboration with beer and rock and roll and music, man, which I'm all about. That's what I do.
Yeah. I do remember what I was going to say earlier. If anybody's interested.
No. Go ahead.
I am. Please hit me.
I was going to say that there seems to be a growing appreciation for traditional beers that are just done well, without the craziness, without the Willy
which I
Wonka-ness.
think in a slightly maybe more saturated market, for the people that are new to craft beer that can't handle the palate wreckers or maybe are a little bit skewed by these weird ingredients that maybe they wouldn't think would be in a beverage, they want to get into something that's going to be nice and familiar and easy to get into. And I think that those relic or old well-done styles are always going to prevail.
Yeah.
And that's where we try to really start. And as a startup, a startup company in a brewery, it's where we wanted to kind of start. I mean, what else do you say for it? Originate from. So we've since pushed the envelope a little bit. We have another beer, which we don't have here. Only because I'm sold out of it, called Black Cowgirl, which is a double black IPA we do with another band that's actually in the studio right now with the same dude that did like Nine Inch Nails and Rob Zombie.
Cool.
If they make it big, it might be really big for us. They're really good friends of mine and probably some of the best rock coming out of anywheres right now. So that's a beer that we do for them that's pretty rad. And we were focusing all the music releases around IPAs. Mm-hmm. What's the most electrifying beer out there? And it's usually IPAs, flavor profile wise. So this one here, the Windhand, we do with Nugget, Millennium, Warrior. It had been Crystal, but now recently this batch was with Belma that we use. So
okay, this was the one that right. I do. This is not an overly bitter IPA. I like it.
It's balanced, 5.1% alcohol. You're drinking an IPA, but at the same time, you're not getting smacked over the head with it. So that's what we wanted to do with the beer. It's kind of like that grill and chill, low and slow type of thing, which is synonymous with Windhand. It's like they're just jamming on the same note for like 4 minutes as you zone out.
Right.
Doom music's definitely synonymous with the Chiba or the Bud. So.
Yeah.
That's just kind of this beer is just kind of just chilling out, just having a good time with it. And about the label, if you go online or you search Windhand IPA on the web, the Skull and Hops and Triangle, that was actually drawn by the guitarist, one of the guitarists, Azakiah Bogdan is his name. 100% American.
That's a guitarist's name,
totally
right there.
Foreign name, but he did the label. Well, he did some of the artwork for the label, and then I vectorized it and put it together. So that was probably one of the stronger points of collaboration, because they were like, dude, they're like, your other beers are great. Just do whatever you do, and so it's been cool. And Esquire magazine did a little story on it and some other neat stuff.
Awesome.
So it's just it's natural for me. It's just creative, and it's in my realm. So
Yeah, and I think the musical collaboration, like you said, it is something that's getting really popular.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's something that you're passionate about music and you're passionate about beer, but from a business perspective too, it opens up so many opportunities to be exposed to people.
Oh,
who
sure. And when
otherwise
people
would-
see entities working together, it's kind of that heartwarming, especially with like beer collaborations, people really like to know that people are working together and not always diametrically opposed business-wise. Because, at the end of the day, like I say, it's always a business, as well as I'm duking it out for taps with other guys who make beers that are killer too. And so people really like to know that we're not just out there trying to fight each other at the taps. We kind of are, but at the same time, we all kind of came from the same place too. And so they really dig the collaboration idea and the creativeness, and it's something new and something cool and fun that everybody can latch onto. And it takes our beers and puts it in the music world, and it takes that music world and
put in,
vice versa. And it's just a cool way to reconnect.
cross promotion.
Yeah, it's great.
Absolutely.
Do you have any new collaborations coming up in the works?
The only other one we're doing in the IPA series right now, or at least for now, music collaboration wise, is with Black Cowgirl. Their guitarist and vocalist Ben McGuire used to play in a band called Electric Horseman, and that band was like a really crazy, heavy, just beat your head in kind of like doom sludge type of thing. And so we want to maybe do an Imperial IPA, 100 IBU, 10% alcohol, just an absolute unrelenting monster. And the idea with the IPA series, especially in this, was to kind of walk you through the basic quintessential citrusy, grapefruity, IPA, go on to maybe a black IPA that shows like, oh, here's some different flavors, and then go into here, what's the extreme you can do with an IPA. And so that's one that,
IBUs.
yeah, I mean, we're theoretically pushing the limit on it, even what you can taste, supposedly, and doing one with them that, Electric Horseman, that names, I think, is somewhat of a, it implies like, what is this thing, and really cool label, and we hope to get that out maybe before summer ends. We'll see. I don't know. It's just with the expansion and the new equipment, trying to get everything wrangled around. We'll see if it makes it on the cut this year. So
Yeah.
Awesome.
So we'll have 3 wild and crazy rock and roll beers.
I have to say for this beer too, I much like the ESB, I really like it. But I will elaborate on that this time.
Oh wow!
Please do.
No,
Expand.
I like because in the description of it, you have the notes of the strong tangerine and the grapefruit, and it comes through, which to me kind of blends together with the bitterness of it.
Yeah,
And I like
yeah.
it. It's,
Very
it's,
well balanced.
it's a fruity, bitter, but they balance each other out, so neither one is overwhelming.
But
And
it
I
has
like
it has enough of the malty side to,
Right.
to sort
the
of
cliche
Yeah,
phrase
yeah.
malt's backbone. But
malt's
yeah.
backbone. Yeah.
Let's break open some of these Origin Series beers. I am excited about this.
Yeah. So these are some new ones we're tinkering and playing with. I guess maybe we'll do the wheat number 6, which is based around an American wheat style. So it's not going to have any of the heavy notes or any of that. It's going to be a kind of a clean beer, probably citrus, lemon. We use Sriracha Ace, Galaxy in that one, Zythos, the blend that they put out there. Yeah, go for it, guys. And then we use a little bit of apricot puree, flaked wheat, white wheat, base malts, maybe some Vienna and C20. This one actually is a fairly complex deal. We got bitter and sweet orange peel on this one. So it's kind of all over the place,
I like the color of it as Wayne's pouring it into mine.
Yeah. It's a little bit on that medium golden color, and then it's just got a touch of haze to it. So this is round number 1 of this guy. I have some tweaks that I want to do, but this is kind of the animal that we're going for. We use the Sriracha Ace for the lemon notes to kind of play into some other stuff.
Oh, I really like that.
We feel it kind of complements the tartness that the apricot. Apricot is interesting in a puree form that we use. I did this one with Oregon purees. On the nose, when you open the can, it almost smells like tomato sauce.
What?
Yeah, there's an acidity and a tartness there that was really surprising. So I was like, because I hadn't really worked too much with apricot before. So then I thought, wow, maybe I can bring Sriracha Ace in and kind of like try to marry some stuff there and play with that with like more of a finishing deal. And we're pretty excited about this beer as well. This to me is like the grass cutter, man. I mean, the super hot. I think I'm going to die and I need a beer.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I like the way to put that. I've had beers before that had apricot in them, and I hated them. I just could not
Yeah.
stand them. But this,
It's just, I feel it's just enough. We were, our little pilot system we have is a 10-gallon, so we did 3 pounds of liquid puree from Morgan Purees in a 10-gallon batch, just because that was like, okay, I got this size, 10-gallon, I got a 3-pound can, boom, that's all I'm going to do, you know? And actually, I think it's just the perfect amount. So this guy's pretty close. There's about some tweaks maybe we'll do with it, but overall, it's pretty good. This one I think came in at like 4.7, another session-y kind of
lower, yeah.
And I want something that, man, if you want to sit there and just roost through a six pack and still be able to walk, then this is definitely one of them.
Do it, yeah. And I like that the apricot flavor. You mentioned the tomato sauce. It does have
That tartness.
tartness and a little bit. I don't want to say savoriness. I don't know exactly what the word I'm looking for is.
I mean, maybe some of that comes a lot from the wheat and the flaked wheat. It's going to give you kind of that silky savor.
Yeah, and I think that comes into the apricot
a
really
good friend of mine, Mike DeGrace, actually. He's I think a prolific home brewer. I mean, his beers are just phenomenal, and he came down just to hang out and kind of brew these beers with me and collaborate a little bit. And so Mike makes some excellent beers himself, and we were talking about maybe adding just a touch of, actually, believe it or not, flaked oat to it to give it a little bit more of that savory undertone, because that's what we felt. We wanted like that creamy silkiness to it, maybe too. You know, we don't know. Maybe we want it to cut, or maybe we want it to have some more of that. But that's the fun with doing the kind of pilot batch stuff. It's pretty rad.
Yeah,
so.
and it follows in the end with a citrusy lemon that sort of cleans up. That.
Yeah, so there's your Sriracha Ace and your Zythos, and just that nice light kind of dancey kind of hop thing going on in the end. You know, not too much towards IPA, but I don't know. To me, it's fairly complex too. I really enjoy that as well.
And it's definitely one you could, like you said, sit on a hot summer day and
just
throw
finish
back a
mowing the
six-pack.
lawn, come in and drink this.
Yeah, just get to work on it and go to town.
So that leaves us with one other on the table. Is that the
number
Origins
5,
right?
Yep. This is in the Origin series. This is our number 5, or the 5th one that we've done out of it. Which actually, I guess we're going reverse chronologically, but I kind of wanted to get into the wheat there for a second. But
I love the aftertaste that the wheat leaves, by the way.
Yeah,
it's
it is nice.
It's
so nice.
Tart lemon kind of. It's just it's nice. It's a good linger, which I dig. I always dig that.
And it's lemon, but it's not
some CO2 there.
sour. You don't get that like
Yeah, it's not
puckering
puckering.
or
It
jowl feel.
doesn't pull those glands too much. But now this one here, and hopefully I'm not setting myself up too much for failure, but I'm actually fairly proud of this beer because we feel this one's going to be like a game changer for us in the session IPA realm.
Yay.
This one uses Citra, Galaxy, pretty simple malt bill overall, just American style, like a Chico style ale yeast. But we were just brilliantly blown away with like the complexity, the sessionability, just all the awesome flavors that are kicking around in this guy.
I love the smell of it.
And the nose, and the thing is, the nose is from that mix of the hops. It's not just one hop.
Yeah.
Because I've done all Citra before, and I've done all Galaxy before, and the blend of it is just. It's almost like a Skittle berry.
And it's
tropical,
like a floral, slightly
melon.
dankish.
Yep.
Very much
Touch of
away
dank in
from
the background.
the
and
citrus.
actually, interestingly enough, almost like a buttery note.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Which actually I love. Like it might be out of place in some places, but it's not a diacetyl. It's something different.
Right. And even taking a sip of it, that kind of comes through a little bit for me.
And I've had a couple beers, and it's funny because, and they're usually home brews, that do have a buttery note. None of Steph's, but I've had ones that like it works and it's good. Yeah. But I always don't want to say that because I'm always afraid they're going to be.
And this,
like,
I would say, this is more akin to like butterscotch.
Exactly.
Yes.
And it only seems to be in the nose and not really much in the palate too much. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's there's a little bit of maltiness. It's just 2-row. We didn't use any of the Maris Otter. We wanted to keep it light. Water was pretty hard on this one. A lot of the sulfate, going on there. We use what is it? Shoot, I'm drawing a blank. Basically, gypsum is what we use to harden with. It's just a simple, easy way to do it. I'm trying to think of the actual official name for it. I'm done. I'm cooked. I can't remember it. Look it up. Yeah, you'll find it.
This is a session IPA. So
absolutely.
is it a lubration session? What's the ABV?
This one here is,
Or is it a Dan Baker
here's the
session?
thing. This is a Lou beer. This is 4.2 on this one.
Oh yes,
Oh, wow.
we would be pleased.
But what we're really proud with is that there's a whole lot more flavor than what 4.2 maybe would suggest. Because you
Yeah, it
taste a lot of
doesn't taste
session
like
beers
4.2.
and they're thin and they're light and there's not much going on. Yet you drink this and it's like this is a hearty, but whatever. It's just it's a lot. You know,
It's thicker, but not like in a creamy thicker.
Exactly,
But it's
yep.
like a richer taste. Yeah.
So once again, for a first stab try at this recipe for a session IPA, it was like me and Mike DeGrace again. We were just like, wow, man, this is pretty damn good. And actually, Kimon, and I would butcher his last name. His last name is Greek, and it kind of looks like Kanonalakis, but I'm probably butchering that. He runs in town here. It's called The Depot, and
sounds
it's a
dirty.
really killer, almost like a CBGB's music venue.
Oh,
And
yeah?
he pulls some of the greatest, biggest bands that you would never expect. And so he literally, I'd have to give Kimon a ton of accolades. He was the first dude to put our beers on. And so he's like fighting in the dirt, trying to get people to come out and see live music and a lot of obscure bands. And York's coming around. I love York County, so hopefully we'll continue to build the music scene and obviously the beer scene downtown. There's a couple brew pubs and stuff going on. And the thing I'm actually most excited about, and I'll push it because it's awesome, it's called Treasure Island in August, where it's going to be a beer tent surrounded by food trucks.
Nice.
So
When?
I have to look the date up, fact check it, but literally I think it's called Treasure Island. It's from the same outfit. Matt is his name, and he did Yorktoberfest. He did the Hibernation.
High Brew.
High Brew, High Brew Nation.
Nice.
And the Taste of PA Beer Garden. And so this is his next brainchild, which is part of their marketing group that they're working on. They did the beer truck thing last time, and I think the overwhelming response was, where in the hell is the beer on this,
Yeah.
And so they're calling it Treasure Island, so it's literally like, I forget how many food trucks, but I think they're expecting well over 9,000 people to be out to this thing, and it's huge for downtown York. I think a lot of the purveyors and restaurant owners are a little bit worried about it, but in my opinion, it's a rising tide that getting those people downtown, getting it that maybe that Lancaster or like the Fishtown Philly vibe going, is going to be great, and I think it's going to be awesome. I'm super stoked about it because I'm a foodie and a food truck nut, and I watch way too much TV with food trucks. So,
I love that show, The Great Food Truck
oh
Race.
yeah, like
Oh, my
me
gosh.
and my girlfriend Jen, and I mean that's probably why I'm sitting at a cool 245 right now because she cooks. Her food's just unbelievable. It's just absolutely crazy how good she cooks, and I think in the ultimate vision of the South County thing, if we can continue to be successful, I would love to inject food in it somewhere.
Yeah,
absolutely.
it's
yeah,
natural.
I saw on your website you have that you're currently not offering food, but I didn't know if that was going to be in the future you wanted to.
I mean, with my business partners, Craig, Kurt and Roger, I think maybe they kind of feel the same way about it. We're all conservative. We want to make sure that we get what's going on happening
Right.
with the new expansion, the 15-barrel system. But we definitely, by all means,
Want to get there.
I think we all, if there was a food element and whether or not it happens, I don't think it could happen at our location. So our building, we built size to go to about 4,000 barrels of annual production, which I think is still attainable in this market. Definitely. I mean,
Yeah.
I think if you do well, and there might be some dudes that, knock on wood for us that, for whatever reasons, things don't work out or whatever. But if we continue to expand, I think we might look at another location with an all-inclusive, very, very destination, awesome architecture. I had this kind of dream in my head. I used to work in historic restoration, so beams and stone,
Oh, yeah,
and
yeah.
old world
yeah.
materials. Something maybe with like that old world European vibe and beer
be
garden and food. And so I dream about it and then wake up and go, son of a bitch.
Yeah.
I need like $20 million. Please.
I quick looked up the food truck thing. It is it's August 31st, 14 at Penn Park in York, 11 a.m. to 6 p.m. Info can be found at foodstruckyork.com.
Foods Truck York?
I don't know if it's Foods Truck
Truck.
or
It's
Foods.
Or is it a play?
It's like being struck by food,
So
but
your
it does
food
have truck
struck.
in it. So Matt's
Yeah,
very clever.
truck,
yeah.
yes.
But it's I
very
think it's
punny.
food struck is how it's supposed
It's
to
very
be.
punny.
But yeah, August 31st, 14.
To the best of my knowledge, our beer should be there. If not, I may have to punch some people in the stomach to make
Just
it.
smuggle it in.
Yeah.
Just set up your
No,
own little
it's
card
better
table.
be
one of
there
those
now.
things. Whatever license they're pulling for, and the same thing with like the York Fairgrounds and everything else. Whoever the distributor is the only beers that can now enter, and that's some of the background politics because of the. It's just how it is, and so hopefully maybe the beer laws will change a little bit. But Matt's definitely doing a good job of having a lot of the newer up and coming breweries and other stuff.
So I saw on your website, let me get back to that tab, on your website here, the current hours of operation for your on-site location are what, Wednesday to Friday, 5:30 to 8, Saturday 11 to 4:30?
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
Yep, that's what we're running right now. Hopefully, as we expand, maybe we'll be able to offer a little more hours. But that was basically that's all the energy I have left hours after working a day job. And
Yeah.
so as we expand, I have a part-time guy, Rob, who helps me out, who's actually an Iraqi war vet, who's just a wonderful guy to have around, longtime friend that helps out at the tap room, and really want to help him out too, and for what he did for the country. So he comes out and does the beer thing, and so he's going to maybe hold that down, and maybe we'll do a little bit, more retail hours as we expand here.
Cool.
So, but for now, those are the hours. Facebook or our webpage would be the best place to see when we may change those as well.
Yeah,
So.
website's just southcountybrewing.com. Is it just facebook.com/southcountybrewing?
I think it's South County Brewing Co. is
Okay.
the slash for the Facebook URL.
Okay.
Only because it's long enough as it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
I didn't want to make it any worse.
Yeah.
So
Are you still doing tours at the brewery?
the tours for the brewery are just show up, ask to see stuff, and we'll go. It's just been one of those.
It's a tour.
Yeah. I mean, here's the deal with it. We don't really do like the whole Trogs or Victory scheduled tour thing or Big Brewery thing because it's been like a one-man show, and it's hard for me to sit there and say, "Oh, yeah, scheduled tours," and like one person shows up, and because we're just tiny yet, you know what I mean? And so, it's just show up at the brewery, and we'll walk you around, tell you whatever you need to know, any questions you have, and homebrewers pretty much know that I'm not like this, whatever you want to say, bitter long-term brewer where I'm going to hide all my secrets. Like you come up, you want to talk beer, I'll tell you how to do it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I always enjoy talking to homebrewers, and definitely the homebrewers know me for that. Like, I'm not hiding anything. I mean, here I've pretty much told you everything we do.
Yeah. This is
And
true.
it's just, there's no point to it. I don't think having this whole, like, proprietary. I mean, there's some things maybe I didn't tell you all my tricks, but for
Right.
the most part, I'm not going to sit there and do that. Like, here, dude, if you want to take my stuff and have a go at it, more power to you, because it takes a lot of work. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And
that's
if a
true.
dude
That's
does it, he
true.
does it better than me, then you know what? Shame on me for not doing better. You know what I mean? So yeah, I'm real open about how to
it
make
so,
some great
Dan.
beers and pour more great beers.
And that's the cool thing, I think, in the craft beer industry in general, is like obviously nobody's giving away all their secrets, but it's not like the formula for Coke.
yeah,
You know? And by that I mean Coca-Cola.
Oh,
everyone.
yeah.
okay.
We all know the formula for cocaine. I mean, geez.
It's just cocaine.
But you'll say, "Oh, I used this hops is in here. This is the strain of yeast I use." It's not. You're not like you may not go into exact detail.
And the
or
recipe
everything,
doesn't
but-
make the beer.
And exactly, the
It's
recipe
the
doesn't
system.
make the beer.
It's the
system,
brewer.
yeah,
it's
it's
the
the
process.
brewer. It's the yeast.
It's gonna
It's
be
the
different.
yeast. It's the yeast is what I tell people. You know what I mean? Honestly, because
It is the yeast.
I don't know. I guess at least my takeaway from it is that at the end of the day, how you treat your yeast is how it turns out, and they're super important. They take king crap over everything. I mean,
Yeah.
they're the dudes that do it. You know what I mean, or dudettes or whatever. But
whatever
yeah,
they are.
whatever kind
They
of
don't
mix.
have gender.
Yeah, I think they're asexual, single cell organisms there, so we're safe.
So we're gonna pick favorites.
Oh, man.
Is it that time,
It's
boys and
that
girls?
time. It's that time.
All right. I don't know if I have one. I like them all pretty much
I really
equally.
like the ESB. I mean, I think it was the first beer I tried when I came to the brewery, and it's just
Yeah,
clean.
it's-
It is to style. It is so drinkable and delicious. And
It's
I-
one that
I love it.
I'll crack one open and I'll drink it. And I'm like, wow, I actually made that, and that's not me being arrogant or anything. It's just I'm really surprised at myself that I've managed to wrangle it all together and make a beer that I really enjoy that much. And to some people, it's funny. There's some people that they pass over this one.
I would have to say, though, yeah, I think I would agree. I think my favorite was probably the ESB. I did really like the what was the Wind
Wind
Hand?
Hand,
Hand.
Yeah,
I did
that's
really
a
like
great
that one. I mean, I really liked all of them. They were. I mean, this is definitely one of those episodes where none of the beers jumped out to say this is my absolute favorite because they're all very good.
But Wayne, gun to your head.
But if you put a gun to my head, I'd probably pick the ESB. Actually, yeah.
That's great. Yeah, I mean I'll take that for sure.
I think for me, I'm going to go with the wheat, the Origins number 6. I
Yeah,
thought
yeah.
that
So
was
good, yeah.
Yeah, it was light. It was light but full. And now that we're going into summer, those long hot days, you can cool off
Yeah.
with.
And I'll
Origins.
even share a little secret with you guys. This one may or may not be named Dahlia. Might be the name for this one. That's the more we drink it, the more it's definitely has a feminine kind of side to it. Kind of the lightness and the crispness and everything about it. But
I
it's
picked the feminine one.
But here's the thing, though. You don't have to feel emasculated
Lovely
drinking
Dahlia.
it because it holds up on its own. And once again, needing something that's in that lighter, crisper, wheat category that's not a heavy. You know what I mean? So, the Dahlia may or may not be the name for that one.
So all the appropriate links that you need will be on BeerBustersPodcast.com. Of course, new and improved.
Yeah. BeerBustersPodcast.com.
Exactly. Thanks to Wayne for toiling away for hours and hours and hours. It looks awesome.
The new website is phenomenal.
Yeah. So go check it out, BeerBustersPodcast.com. Make sure you check out the link for the BYO magazine as well with the free trial issue. But BYO magazine, BeerBustersPodcast.com.
I'm lucky because I get all that stuff for free being a brewer.
Awesome.
Or become a brewer. There you go.
There you go.
Become a brewer or get it for kind of cheap.
Every time I open the mailbox, I have a new free publication. I'm like, this is amazing.
Well, this unfortunately does bring us to the end of another episode of Beer Busters Podcast. And it was the somewhat great Russell Crowe who said, I have respect for beer. He went up a few notches in my book after that quote. Well, again, JR, we'd love to thank you for having us out here.
Yep.
It's been a blast. And if you're in the York area, check out South County Brewing because it was phenomenal. As always, I'm Dan Baker, joined by my co-host and virologist,
Steph Hefner.
and our entertainer,
Way bigger.
Until next time, my friends, we bid you adieu.